every subject about our religious or spiritual life has to do with integrating an awareness of Hashem into our lives. That's really where the story starts. It's integrating the fact that what you see is not all of what you get. Whereas in Western critical thought, what you see is what you get, and not more and not less. In a spiritual realm, what you see is not all of what you get, because it's all under an umbrella of Hashem's involvement or engagement in the world. So just to go back to the introduction that the Ramchal writes in his Derech Hashem, he introduces the story that if you look at details and you don't look at the larger picture, you will fail to understand the detail. The way that I think of that is if somebody wants to understand a shoelace and he doesn't understand the idea of shoes or why people need shoes and why they need to be secure on their feet, then as much as he studies the shoelace, and he might find out that it's made out of cotton, and he finds several shoelaces that are of different lengths, and whatever he'll find out about the shoelace, in the absence of information about the general rule about shoes, he won't get anything. Or whatever he gets is almost trivial, to find out that the shoelace is cotton or polyester or whatever misses the point. But if he understands about shoes, then he'll understand that some shoes do have laces, some shoes don't have laces, they're designed different ways, and the details, he might not get all the details. But he didn't make the mistake of looking at a detail without looking at the category that detail belongs to. So that's why the Ramchal wrote Derech Hashem. He wrote it because he wanted to make some seder in our lives, so that we start from the big picture and work our way down more and more specifically. But he's not looking to give us all the details, because you don't need to have all the details. If you have the big picture, then some details you'll get, some details you'll never get, but it's okay not to get all the details. There are too many details in the world for us to get anyway. So let's bring that back to our lives on a day-to-day basis. There are events that are happening in our lives all the time, things that are happening, big things, small things. They are the fact that we're engaging in this conversation right now is one of the things that is happening in our lives. And if we try to study the specifics of this conversation without taking into account the larger category under which it operates, we're going to miss the message. So it's not about my accent, and it's not about the backdrop. It's not about the time. Well, those are true, and those are details of the story. But that's not the story. The story always has to work its way back to the very beginning. You know, it was a joke when we were younger and Menachem Begin was the prime minister. He would start every speech, and I mean every speech, with the same opening line. For 2,000 years, the Jewish people, and that was the opening of his talks, because He was going to talk about Zionism and about the foundation and about the needs of the state. And he wanted to set it in its general category, which is the exile of the Jewish people for 2,000 years. And so that was the klal for which his speech, whatever the speech happened to be about, was a prat. So we're going from a general principle to a detail. In our lives, the general klal always goes back to Hashem created the world. He continues to create the world. He is the Borei. He's the Manhi. And everything that he does, like we say in the first of the 13 Animamins, everything in the world is his doing. And as difficult as it might be to internalize that, life is much more difficult without that. Because then you start studying little details in our lives and you get caught up in those details without placing them into their context. And their context is that Hashem runs the world that he created, and he created it only to be mative. The whole purpose of the world is for us to be closer to him. And so somehow the detail that we're looking at fits into that backdrop. You say, but I may not understand how and why. And that's okay. Not because it's fun to not understand. And you study the Derech Hashem, he tries to cover almost all of the eventualities in a person's life or in the collective life of Klal Yisrael. He tries to cover those to explain how they might fit into the picture. But I don't know that that's the key. The key is to know that his providence and his involvement brought about this current event. Now, that is a process that a person develops as they become more conscious. So a person who's not thinking or doesn't know how to think in terms of the general picture down to the specifics is not going to have an easy time with miracles, for example. Somebody who thinks about it all the time starts to have an easier time with miracles, such that the Gemara in Tainis tells us that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa's daughter was very upset because she had accidentally used vinegar to fill the cups of the Shabbos candles. And here, what is she going to do? Shabbos needs light. And her father says, Ma ichbas lach. What do you care? The one who said that oil should burn will say that vinegar can burn. The idea that there's nothing in the world that is outside of his providence, there's nothing in the world that's beyond his hand, was developed by Rav Chanina ben Chadjan to such a degree that he didn't inherently see the difference between oil and vinegar, because those are details. Those are pratim. And he was focused on the klal. And the klal is Hashem's providence. And he so much internalized that was the klal, that the prat, he could literally say the words, Ma ichbas lach. What do you care? Don't get caught up in the details. What do you care? He said the oil should burn. He said the vinegar should burn. Why do you care about the detail? And of course, he was trying to bring his daughter along with him to a place of an awareness of the klal. Where she was upset is because she had accidentally put vinegar in. That act of putting in vinegar and trying to light vinegar, you could focus on it and you could say that's terrible, It won't be light for Shabbos. Or, as her father did, why don't you go back and look at this as part of the klal? And when you look at it as part of the klal, you can get to the point where you realize that everything is just an expression of his will. And as an expression of his will, oil, vinegar, what difference is it? He's restricted? He's not restricted. Now, how come everybody's not able to do that? Because we tend to get caught in the weeds. Our tendency is to spend a lot of our energy in the details. And it's there that things bring us joy or make us upset or work out the way we want them to or don't work out the way we want them to. That involvement, that engagement distances us from miracles. Whereas, as much as we can, to go back to the klal, to always be engaged with, for 2,000 years, to always be engaged in the general principles. Hashem created the world, and he is an ongoing creator. He is the Poel Yeshuos, is the Baal Milchamos, is the Zorea Tzedakos, Matzmiach Yeshuos, Bori Refuos, Novra Sehilos. It's all him. Well, the more we do that, the more we're in that klal place. And the details, although they are significant because they're expressions of Hashem's will, they stop being so central because they are part of his will, not his will in its entirety. And that part of the will that we focus on, the internet is working, the internet is not working, it's up, it's down. Wait a second, back up a little bit. This is his will. And it all can make sense, but it can only begin to make sense if we start the calculation from the right place. And that is a recognition that it's all his will. So that's why the Rambam put it as the first of the Ikarim that we affirm. And it's amazing to me that he says that we can affirm it fully. An imamin be'emunah shlema seems to be that we can affirm it fully, but maybe cognitively we can affirm it fully. That we know, at least on a cognitive level, perhaps it hasn't filtered its way down to our hearts such that we respond to circumstances in our lives that way, but at least maybe on a cognitive level, we can affirm with absolute certainty that everything that happens in the world is an extension of the will of the Borei Yisbarach, who levado, who alone, without any assistance, addresses every possible need and circumstance in this world and the next.